Today I'm going to cover 25 cards that you need to upgrade in Clash Royale. They will make your life so much easier playing this game, starting off with the Ice Spirit. Now the Ice Spirit is an interesting one because this card is so good, and we're in a spot right now where every other spirit is significantly worse than the Ice Spirit. Upgrading the Ice Spirit obviously changes the main interaction of getting King Tower chip damage. If you have a level 14 Ice Spirit versus a level 15 tower, it won't get to the tower, and getting chip damage with the Ice Spirit is pretty helpful. Other than that, it is in every single cycle deck in the game. If you don't play cycle, you may not use the Ice Spirit. That's okay. Next up is the Fireball. This may seem simple to some of you, but the Fireball is an extremely important card to upgrade. It can be used as a spell in almost any deck in the game. Sure, certain decks would rather use maybe an Earthquake or a Poison, but Fireball can get the job done in any deck. It's easy to upgrade. You get it early on, and basically, if you have a level 15 Fireball and you're going up against like level 14 Wizards, Musketeers, things like that, you will be able to kill them and not leave them at 1 HP like you would if they're both the same level. So this is a kind of a broken early game card. If you over level the Fireball, you will have a great time, and even if you're at the position where you're not getting over leveled anymore, this is a very versatile spell. Almost everybody knows this, but we had to include it. Next up, we have the Log. Very similar to the Fireball, this is another spell that most people probably know that they should be upgrading, but if you don't, here's a refresher. You need to upgrade the Log. This card has interaction changes at lower levels, so it's important to level it up as early as you can. Pretty much all of your legendary cards should be going into the Log as soon as you unlock it, because it is useless if you don't level it up, and if you use a different spell, you're not going to quite get the same value you'd get out of the Log, like using a Zap or Snowball or something. Obviously, the Log, another card that most people know you should be upgrading this thing. If you haven't started already, I would probably recommend it. Moving on to the Hog Rider, this is an interesting one because obviously if you already have a deck that you're working on and you like that doesn't have the Hog Rider in it, win conditions aren't something you can just slap in your deck. It doesn't work like that. But if you are somebody who's looking for a win condition to play or anything like that, all right, my Quicker Wireless is acting up, lovely. The Hog Rider is extremely strong. You get him early on, he will carry you through the early stages of the game, and it's a very free to play accessible card and deck that will make your life a lot easier. And if you're kind of at that point where you're tired of losing and your deck isn't just good enough, switching to a Hog Rider deck is extremely strong and will pay dividends down the road. This is an interesting one that I have to touch upon, the Tower Princess. Now, you can't prioritize upgrading the Tower Princess before you reach a level. Let's say your King Tower is at level 10. You can't go and upgrade the Princess Tower to level 15. But as if you probably haven't looked at this, but if you notice, you get level 15 at 54. So King Tower 54. Once you hit this, you get 50,000 elite wildcards and 50,000 princesses to upgrade your Tower Princess to level 15. Now, a lot of people have a 15 King Tower but don't have a 15 Tower Princess because they spend their elite wildcards on something else, which is a big mistake. This might not apply to a lot of people, but you definitely, as soon as you hit level 15, should upgrade the Tower Princess. It's a very consistent tower troop, probably the best in the game, and you lose 400 health and massive damage if you don't upgrade it, and interaction changes, like you take 3 hits to kill goblins instead of 2. This is a must-need necessity to upgrade. Coming up next is another win condition. This one's more interesting than the Hog Rider because it fits in more decks, and it's a bit harder to play than the Hog Rider. The Goblin Barrel, being an epic, is extremely easy to upgrade. I feel like it's an arena like 2 unlock or something like that. You get it really early on, and so I kind of addressed this in one of my previous videos, the best decks for every arena. But Hog Rider and Goblin Barrel are 2 things that you can upgrade immediately no matter where you are in the game, and will pay dividends because they're both extremely good decks. Obviously, if you don't want to play a super meta deck, you don't really have to. I would really recommend it because it's extremely strong, but the Goblin Barrel is a versatile card, fits in almost every deck, and it does suffer from being under leveled, so you want to upgrade it if you're going to use it. It definitely pays dividends. I've said that probably like 3 times, and I'll probably say it 10 more times this video. Next up, we've got our first evolution of the video. This is the Evolved Valkyrie, which will fit in literally any deck. Yes, I know that certain decks would prefer the Knight because he has good stats for the cost Costly's 3 elixir, or 2.6, or rather run the Ice Golem, but you can run the Valkyrie as your mini tank in any deck. The evolved Valkyrie, just the base Valkyrie straight up is a good card. It's solid. The evolved Valkyrie will bail you out of games against beatdown pushes. It'll stop hog riders. There's so many different interactions that the evolved Valkyrie will get you, and you can put it in whatever deck you're using or build a deck around the strongest Evo Valkyrie decks. It doesn't matter what you do, the Valkyrie is very strong, and it probably might be a top 3 evolution to go after no matter where you are in the game. Would recommend. Next up, we have the base Firecracker. This card is extremely versatile. It can fit as a support troop in so many different decks, whether it's your own homemade mid-ladder menace deck or a cycle deck. The Firecracker obviously may not be the ideal choice for a lot of decks, but you don't have to have the ideal choice always. What if I don't want to spend $65 to max a deck? That's fine. That's perfectly fine. The Firecracker fits the support troop role in so many decks very, very well, even without the evolution. The problem with the Firecracker is you need to focus on leveling up as soon as you can, because the Firecracker, when you level it up, it won't die to logs. It dies to logs if it's under leveled. It gets more damage. It kills more things. The pellets do more, and the survivability of the Firecracker is heavier. So you have so many variables being affected by the level of this card, as well as it just being extremely versatile. And although the evolution is not the most strongest thing in the world, the Firecracker is very, very good as a base card, and I would recommend upgrading it. Next up, we've got the Barbarian Barrel, aka the budget log, for a lot of you players who don't have access to the log, because 20 legendaries is, a bit hard to get. Maybe you don't get lucky in the lucky drops. You can use the Barbarian Barrel to an extent as a log replacement. The Barbarian Barrel, I say that because bait is very, very popular. It might not be extremely popular down in lower arenas, but right now all over mid ladder and top ladder, bait is everywhere. And so log and arrows are two things that are really necessary. And if you can't afford a log, the Barbarian Barrel does almost everything the log does, except it doesn't knock back, obviously, and it can't really be used on offense very well. How could we not include the Mega Knight, man? This card gets so much value because people don't know how to not give you value. It's that simple. The Mega Knight will almost always give you good value if you use it properly, and this card is something that you should definitely focus on upgrading because it will carry you through. I mean, if you can get it early on, it will absolutely carry you, but Mega Knight's not a card that is extremely hard to play. It's not a card that's very bad. It's honestly, as you climb ladder, it gets worse and worse, but it's never a card that's really, really bad, especially if you go further as to get the evolved version or you already have it for free during the event they did. The Mega Knight is a very good card that will carry you, and it's pretty fun to play. It's just an upgrade that, I would prioritize if you just like living on easy mode. Hopping into another win condition, we've got the Royal Giant. Obviously, when we do win conditions, you can't just slap them into any deck, but the Royal Giant is something that is very easy to play up to a certain point. It will get you good value pretty much always. You surround it with the right troops, and you're going to have a cakewalk through the arenas. This card is something you unlock not too early on, but is something that you can prioritize upgrading because it will be good long term. Obviously, the Royal Giant's not going to absolutely carry you. You're not going to win every game, but it is a very good win condition that you can make a good deck around, and I definitely would recommend upgrading it. Next up, we've got the Ice Spirit Evolution, which is something that people don't really think about. Right now, it is absolutely broken. It's one of the 2 best Evos in the entire game. This thing is absolutely broken. Getting this Ice Spirit Evo as early as you physically can will literally carry you. You don't need to know what you're doing. This card will bail you out of defenses, will change games, is easy to get, and is very versatile. As we mentioned with the Ice Spirit at the beginning of the video, it does everything the Ice Spirit does, except it does it better. It can win you games straight up. This is one of the earliest evolutions I would prioritize going after. Next card is Guards. Now, this is a card that is very overlooked. I feel like the majority of the player base just doesn't think about how good this card is. Ever since they don't die to arrows, they are one of the go-to swarm cards because they are very, very difficult to kill if they're on your side of the board, which makes them one of the best support troop, or not support troops, just counters to use. I don't even know what to really call these. I mean, I guess they're a swarm unit, but they are obviously, they're gonna die to like a wizard, as you can see here, but they are oftentimes, especially if you tank for them with something else or get rid of like a support troop that's standing behind whatever you're trying to kill with the guards, they're gonna get consistent value constantly. Next up, we've got the Goblin Gang, which is almost identical to the guards in the reasons that I provided to upgrade these cards. They are very versatile, a great swarm card. The spear goblins are broken. People don't understand how good the spear goblins are, but this card will target air too. So ultimately, it's a very, very strong card that fits in so many things and is it's just a very good card. Next up is Evo Skeletons. Now, if you're a cycle player, prioritize these things immediately. If you're not, I would highly recommend thinking about switching to cycle, but you can still fit these skeletons in non-cycle decks as well, because if you play your cards right, in both senses of the phrase, you can get a really nice value out of the skeletons rather consistently if you're watching your opponent's spells and swarm cards. And the skeletons are just very strong and one of the very few evolutions that fit in a ton of decks and are very versatile. Would highly recommend trying to upgrade these cards. Next up is the Bomber, which is a very interesting card again, because I feel like a lot of people overlook how good the Bomber is. It's only 2 elixir, delete swarm cards. It fits in cycle decks, beatdown decks, control decks, whatever. And we are going to talk about the Evo Bomber as well, because the Evo Bomber is one of the strongest evolutions in the game. Look at what it's doing to this mortar. That's what you're going to be able to do against so many cards. It's basically an Evo Firecracker that's a bit easier to get value with, because people kind of predict the firecracker, but people tend to forget about the bomber, and oftentimes you're going to find yourself getting tons of offensive value out of it. As for the normal bomber, a very solid support card you can't go wrong with, but the Evo Bomber just takes it to another level, and I would definitely focus on the Evo Bomber. Let's say, for example, you don't want to use either the Ice Spirit or the Skeletons, even though those pair well with the bomber. The Bomber is a very solid option. Would highly recommend to upgrade it as soon as you can, no matter where you are in Clash Royale. Next up is our first and only building, the Cannon. Now, the Cannon is extremely strong in the meta right now. Absolutely dominant in every deck where you can fit a building. The Cannon will be viable over every other card right now. Building wise, the Cannon provides extreme DPS for very cheap, and that's why it kind of fits in E-Giant, cycle decks. Any deck you think about running a building in, the Cannon will dominate, and it's very easy to upgrade because you unlock it early on, and especially if you go with the cycle route, it is in every cycle deck, so you literally can't go wrong with using the Cannon. It's just such a strong card. You can honestly even fiddle with it in your mid-ladder menace deck or whatever you're running. Cannon, very, very good. Would recommend. Obviously, we got to talk about the Miner. The thing is, the Miner kind of fell off. The days of him being the #1 win condition in your Miner cycle deck are gone, but the Miner is extremely effective as a secondary win condition and as something used to snipe support troops in so many decks. So the Miner is something you really can't go wrong with as an upgrading, because you can build your deck around it. You can use it in pretty much every deck to snipe support troops or get secondary damage or tank for things. It's very, very versatile. It's extremely good to upgrade no matter where you are in the game. It is a legendary, so it's a bit tougher to upgrade, but you won't regret it at all. I don't think there are that many interaction changes off the top of my head between 14 and 15, however, so you might not need to prioritize that. Next up is the Cannon card, which is undeniably one of the strongest cards right now. Completely broken. I'd say a top 3 card in the entire game. The Cannon card can fill that role that a Musketeer provides or something like that. You've got to pair extra air defense with it, but the Cannon card will be a very solid DPS unit and ranged unit that also turns into a building that also applies insane offensive pressure. You do have to be aware of inflating your deck's elixir cost, so you're going to need to fit the Cannon card with a fewer, less heavy cards, or else you're going to find yourself with a very clunky deck. However, if you don't have too many high elixir cards, the Cannon card will absolutely feast on defense and offense, and I would highly recommend upgrading it. Epics are very easy to upgrade anyways, and no matter what deck you're using, you could probably fit a Cannon card in it and reap the results. And Cannon card in the pocket, don't even get me started on that. Where would we be if we didn't talk about the arrows? I think they're they might be right up with the log in terms of the most highest used spell right now. The arrows, great tower damage that you kind of don't think of because you almost always can hit the tower with them. They kill so many units right now. You almost always pair them with a second spell to allow you to kill things that they normally wouldn't kill. The arrows kill so many cards like the archers, the minions, just anything. The Firecracker being one of the most popular cards is one of the reasons why arrows is so successful. But arrows just do good damage. They're solid against pretty much everything, and almost every opponent you'll go up against has something that dies to arrows. So running arrows log, arrows fireball, arrows anything, since they're not technically a heavy spell, is a very solid recipe for success, and I would upgrade the arrows, like, definitely, no matter where you are. Next up is P.E.K.K.A. This is an interesting one because P.E.K.K.A. right now is very, very strong in the meta. This could change. People complain about just how broken P.E.K.K.A. is, but for right now, P.E.K.K.A. is one of the best cards in the game to upgrade. Would prioritize it because it makes Clash Royale really easy. So right now, with the state of the P.E.K.K.A., you would be able to climb massively with the P.E.K.K.A. no matter where you are, as long as you build a P.E.K.K.A. deck around this. And the P.E.K.K.A. is just... It's self-explanatory why it's so good, and the evolution is just the cherry on top because it heals itself, which is the only weakness that the P.E.K.K.A. has is survivability versus speed units or swarm units, and obviously it's slow, but that doesn't really matter that much. P.E.K.K.A. very, very solid. We're actually going to go back to talking about the Goblin Barrel, this time with the evolved version. This is a card that will probably be the hottest take on this video, I think, because a lot of people just think this card sucks. It really doesn't. But you won't get value out of this evolution in your normal deck. You have to create a deck that has split lane pressure, whether it's a fast cycle bait deck or something like recruits, because you don't unlock the potential of this unless you have 2 pushes going at the same time. That's a bit niche, but building an Evo Goblin Barrel deck is ridiculous. People don't understand how strong this is because they're not using it correctly. Barrel is one of the most broken things in the meta right now, and I would absolutely upgrade it. This is a sleeper card. A lot of people don't realize just how effective the Dark Goblin is. He spell baits, he does insane damage, he's insanely fast, he applies very good offensive pressure, and he has a ton of range, and he's extremely versatile, which might be the best traits that any card has had so far in this video. Dark Goblin, insanely good value, and you could fit him in your deck. And I would just try him out because he's super, super fun, dude. Obviously, the list wouldn't be complete without the Goblinstein. Now, the Goblinstein is the greatest card this game has ever seen, and it dominates, and it's 50% of all the top 200 decks in Clash Royale right now. It's absolutely broken beyond belief. You just completely get boosted by this card. Play it, upgrade it if you can. It probably won't get nerfed for another 4 to 5 months because I think the person who's doing the balance changes is being held at gunpoint and is not allowed to nerf this card. So upgrade it now or use boost potions or do whatever. It will probably be good for another 3 to 4 months, and even then, I don't think it'll die. It just won't be as dominant as it is now. This is a free finish. Use it.